What happens when Hollywood spends a fortune, promises the next huge blockbuster, and audiences simply refuse to buy tickets? 1983 gave us legendary hits, but behind them was a graveyard of expensive failures. One studio watched more than $30 million disappear, and the warning signs appeared within weeks. Subscribe to the channel because Hollywood's most expensive mistakes are often more interesting than its biggest successes. Number 20. The Star Chamber. Michael Douglas had already proved that he could carry serious dramas, and the Star Chamber offered him a controversial role as Judge Stephen Hardin. Hardin believes in the legal system until technical mistakes repeatedly allow dangerous suspects to escape punishment. His frustration leads him toward a private group of judges who secretly decide how such people should be handled. The idea was powerful. It asked whether good people could become dangerous when they stopped trusting the law. However, audiences looking for fast action received a slow moral argument instead. Those expecting a courtroom drama were surprised when the story changed into a conspiracy thriller. One of the film's most memorable scenes shows Hardin entering the secret meeting room for the first time. The judges sit together like respected professionals, calmly discussing cases that have failed in court. Nothing about them looks wild or criminal. That calmness makes the scene uncomfortable, because Hardin slowly understands that their private decisions have serious consequences. Later, Hardin discovers that evidence in one case may have been misunderstood. He tries to stop the punishment he previously approved, placing him against the same organization he joined. The final chase turns his moral mistake into a physical danger. The movie reportedly cost around $8 million but earned only about $5.5 million domestically. That was not a complete collapse compared with the disasters coming later, but theaters kept a large share of ticket money. Once advertising and distribution were included, the numbers offered little reason for celebration. Number 19. Stroker Ace. Burt Reynolds had once been almost unbeatable in Southern racing comedies. Movies such as Smokey and the Bandit turned fast cars, police chases, and his relaxed smile into box office gold. By 1983, however, the formula was losing power. In Stroker Ace, Reynolds plays a talented but difficult race car driver who signs a contract without carefully reading it. His new sponsor, an aggressive businessman named Clyde Torkel, forces him to promote a fried chicken company. Stroker must wear ridiculous costumes, appear in embarrassing advertisements, and pretend to love a product he cannot stand. The movie follows Stroker as he attempts to escape the contract, while continuing his racing career. Lonnie Anderson plays Pembroke Feeney, the company employee assigned to control him, but she slowly becomes sympathetic to his situation. The famous comic sequence places Stroker inside an oversized chicken costume during a promotional appearance. The joke is supposed to come from seeing a proud racing hero reduced to a walking advertisement. Reynolds performs the embarrassment well, but the scene also reflected the film's bigger problem. Audiences had already seen him play similar rebellious characters many times. The racing scenes are energetic, especially when Stroker deliberately creates trouble on the track to damage his sponsor's plans. Yet the story feels like a weaker copy of Reynolds and director Hal Needham's earlier hits. The film carried a reported budget of roughly $14 to $15 million and earned about $11 million domestically. Its opening was only modest, and earnings dropped noticeably during the second weekend. For a movie built around one of America's biggest stars, that was a serious disappointment. You have already reached 2 forgotten Hollywood disasters, but the losses become much larger from here. Like the video, share it with a movie lover, and subscribe so you never miss these expensive Hollywood stories. Number 18. Yellowbeard. On paper, Yellowbeard looked like a comedy fan's dream. Graham Chapman, Peter Cook, Eric Idle, John Cleese, Madeline Kahn, Marty Feldman, Peter Boyle, Cheech and Chong, and James Mason all appeared in the same pirate adventure. That cast should have guaranteed laughter. Instead, audiences received a strange mixture of British comedy, American humor, pirate parody, and chaotic action that never completely became one clear movie. Graham Chapman plays Yellowbeard, a loud and unpredictable pirate who has been imprisoned for years. Government officials release him, hoping that he will lead them to his hidden treasure. Yellowbeard then discovers that he has a quiet, educated son named Dan, who has none of his father's wild personality. The journey becomes a race involving government agents, rival pirates, family secrets, and a treasure map hidden in an unusual place. The famous scene involving Yellowbeard's escape from prison establishes the film's strange tone. He does not carefully plan his freedom like an intelligent criminal. He simply throws himself into every problem with unstoppable confidence, while everyone around him struggles to understand what he is doing. Another memorable sequence takes place aboard the pirate ship, where different comedy styles compete for attention. Some performers use dry wordplay, while others depend on loud physical jokes. Instead of strengthening one another, the styles often feel disconnected. Reports place the production cost somewhere between $6 and $10 million. The film earned only about $4.3 million domestically and disappeared from many theaters quickly. Even its remarkable cast could not turn it into the major comedy event that producers expected. Number 17. Get Crazy. Get Crazy was directed by Alan Arkush, whose experience with music and comedy made him seem perfect for a giant New Year's Eve rock movie. The film contains energetic performances, strange characters, colorful sets, and enough jokes for several separate comedies. Unfortunately, almost nobody saw it during its original release. The story takes place inside the Saturn Theater, an old concert hall controlled by promoter Max Wolf. Max plans a huge New Year's Eve show featuring several unusual musicians. At the same time, a greedy businessman named Colin Beverly wants to destroy the theater and replace it with a modern entertainment building. Daniel Stern plays Neil Allen, the young employee trying to keep the concert alive. Malcolm McDowell appears as Reggie Wanker, a dramatic British rock star whose personality combines several famous singers. Lou Reed plays a quiet performer who spends much of the movie hidden away from the celebration. The film's most memorable sequence is the final concert. Performers rush on stage, backstage problems become increasingly ridiculous, and the theater seems ready to collapse under the weight of its own madness. A giant stage prop becomes part of the action, while the crowd continues celebrating as if nothing unusual is happening. The movie understands the excitement of old concert halls, but its non-stop style left some viewers exhausted. Arkush later said the picture contained too much craziness and not enough human emotion. He also claimed its financial structure encouraged a release that would lose money. With a reported budget of $5.5 million, Get Crazy earned only about $1.6 million domestically. Its theatrical run was brief, but home video viewers later helped it become a cult favorite. Number 16. Strange Invaders. Strange Invaders tried to recreate the feeling of 1950s science fiction movies while also making fun of them. That was a difficult balance. The film wanted audiences to respect its mystery and laugh at its old-fashioned ideas at the same time. Paul Le Mat plays Charles Bigelow, a university professor whose former wife suddenly disappears. His search takes him to Centerville, Illinois, a town that appears to have remained unchanged since the 1950s. The people smile politely, the buildings look strangely perfect, and nobody wants to answer his questions. Charles soon realizes that the town's residents are visitors from another world. They arrived decades earlier and have been quietly waiting for the right moment to complete their mission. One of the movie's most famous images comes when an apparently normal person removes a human disguise, revealing a glowing, unnatural face beneath it. The effect deliberately resembles the colorful monsters of older science fiction films. It is strange, slightly funny, and unsettling at the same time. Another memorable sequence occurs when Charles tries to convince reporter Betty Walker that his story is real. She initially sees him as a confused professor, but evidence slowly forces her to take the threat seriously. Their investigation leads to government secrets, hidden identities, and a child connected to the visitor's plan. The film reportedly cost around $5.5 million, but earned only about $1.4 million domestically. Critics and audiences seemed uncertain whether it was a serious mystery, a parody, or a loving tribute. The planned series of related strange films ended after this failure, although the movie later attracted viewers who appreciated its unusual style. Number 15. The Lonely Lady. Few movies from 1983 were attacked as strongly as The Lonely Lady. Based on Harold Robbins's novel, the film was designed as a major dramatic showcase for Pia Zadora. Instead, it became one of the year's most famous critical and financial embarrassments. Zadora plays Jerilee Randall, an ambitious young writer who dreams of succeeding in Hollywood. She believes talent and determination will open doors, but she repeatedly meets powerful people who manipulate her career for their own benefit. The story follows Jerilee from her early writing efforts to her eventual success as a screenwriter. Along the way, she experiences broken promises, a troubled marriage, professional rejection, and the cold business behind Hollywood glamour. The movie's best-known scene comes near the end, when Jerilee receives an important industry award. Standing before an audience filled with the same people who mistreated or ignored her, she delivers an emotional speech about everything she survived. The moment was intended to be inspiring, but its dramatic style became widely mocked. Another famous sequence involves Jerilee becoming so frustrated with her writing that she attacks her typewriter. The machine becomes a symbol of her anger, but the scene's exaggerated presentation turned it into unintended comedy for many viewers. The production reportedly cost between $6 and $7 million, with some sources listing a slightly lower estimate. It earned only around $1.2 million domestically. Poor reviews quickly became the movie's main publicity. and it later received several Golden Raspberry Awards. Instead of establishing Zadora as a serious dramatic star, The Lonely Lady became a warning about what happens when a prestige project feels manufactured around its leading performer. Number 14. Curse of the Pink Panther. The central problem with Curse of the Pink Panther was clear before filming began. How could the series continue without Peter Sellers? Sellers had made Inspector Clouseau one of cinema's most recognizable comedy characters. After his passing, director Blake Edwards attempted to build a new hero, named Clifton Slay, played by Ted Wass. In the movie, Clouseau has disappeared. A computer is used to select the world's greatest detective to find him. Chief Inspector Dreyfus secretly changes the computer because he does not want Clouseau to return. The machine chooses Slay, a clumsy American police officer who appears even less prepared than Clouseau. The film follows Slay across Europe as he meets returning characters from earlier movies. David Niven, Robert Wagner, Capucine, Herbert Lom, Bert Kwok, and several familiar performers appear, but the missing presence of Sellers remains impossible to ignore. The most remembered scene arrives when Roger Moore appears in disguise as a man who may actually be Clouseau after extensive cosmetic changes. Moore was credited under the joke name Turk Thrust. His brief physical comedy performance is amusing, yet it also reminds viewers that the movie has spent most of its running time searching for a character it cannot truly bring back. Production and post-production were reportedly rushed. The release was delayed and received limited promotion, while major legal disagreements developed between Edwards and MGM. With an estimated $11 million budget, the movie earned only about $4.5 million domestically. Plans for Ted Wass to continue in several sequels were abandoned, proving that a familiar title could not replace the performer who had defined it. Number 13. Table for Five. It was not a cheap family drama filmed on a few simple sets. It reportedly cost around $10 million and used real international locations, including Rome, Athens, Egypt, and a working cruise ship. Jon Voight plays J.P. Tannen, a former professional golfer who has spent little time with his 3 children. Hoping to repair their relationship, he takes them on a Mediterranean cruise. He initially treats the journey like an entertaining holiday rather than a serious attempt to become their father again. The situation changes when the children's mother suddenly passes away back home. Tannen must tell them what happened and decide whether he is finally prepared to accept responsibility for their future. The strongest scene occurs near the pyramids. Surrounded by one of the world's most impressive landscapes, Tannen struggles to explain the family tragedy to his children. The beautiful location contrasts with the painful news, and Voight gives the scene a quiet honesty. Another memorable moment comes when Trung, the adopted son, runs away during a stop in Tunis. Tannen follows him through the busy marketplace. When he finally catches the boy, Trung tells him that the children need a real father, not another friendly adult who will eventually disappear. The film received serious performances and attractive photography, but audiences did not rush to see a slow family drama about grief and responsibility. Its title also gave little idea of the emotional story. Against its reported $10 million production cost, Table for Five earned only about $2.4 million domestically. Even before marketing and theater shares were considered, most of the production money was missing from the ticket totals. Number 12. The Keep. Michael Mann's The Keep should have been unforgettable. It had a mysterious European fortress, German soldiers, an ancient supernatural force, music by Tangerine Dream, and ambitious visual design. Instead, production problems and major editing changes turned it into a confusing theatrical failure. Set during the Second World War, the story follows German soldiers who occupy an isolated stone fortress in Romania. Despite warnings from the local caretaker, the soldiers remove silver objects from the walls. Their actions release a powerful being called Molasar. The military brings a Jewish historian, Dr. Theodor Kuza, to the fortress because he understands its ancient writing. Molasar restores Kuza's health and convinces him that it can defeat the occupying forces. However, the creature's true purpose is far more dangerous. The most famous scene shows 2 soldiers entering a hidden chamber after believing its silver decorations are valuable. As they explore the darkness, an enormous empty space opens behind the fortress wall. Strange light, smoke, and Tangerine Dream's music create an atmosphere that feels like a nightmare. A mysterious traveler named Glaken later arrives to confront Molasar. Their connection is barely explained in the released version, because the studio greatly shortened Mann's original cut. Important character details and pieces of the mythology disappeared. The reported production budget reached approximately $11 million. Paramount released the film on just over 500 screens in December. It opened with roughly $1 million and completed its domestic run with only about $4.2 million. The movie later became a cult favorite, But the damaged theatrical version ended Mann's first attempt at large-scale supernatural filmmaking with a substantial financial shortfall. Number 11. Heart Like a Wheel. Heart Like a Wheel proved that positive reviews and a strong leading performance do not always produce ticket sales. Bonnie Bedelia plays Shirley Muldowney, the real drag racing pioneer who entered a sport dominated by men. The story begins when Shirley is a young wife and mother. After discovering that she is an excellent driver, she begins competing in local races. Her husband Jack helps build her first racing car, but their relationship becomes strained as Shirley's career grows. Beau Bridges plays driver Connie Kalita, who becomes her rival, supporter, and complicated personal connection. The movie's best scenes place Shirley behind the wheel. One especially memorable sequence shows her preparing for a major race, while officials, sponsors, and other drivers doubt her ability. The noise suddenly feels distant as she concentrates on the starting lights. When the car launches forward, the scene becomes less about speed and more about proving that she belongs there. Another important moment comes when Shirley challenges racing officials who refuse to grant her the proper license. She does not ask for special treatment. She demands the same chance given to male drivers. The problem was not necessarily the film's quality. 20th Century Fox tested it in selected markets, where it performed poorly. According to the American Film Institute's production history, the studio canceled its planned national opening and largely abandoned the release. The movie reportedly cost $7.5 million, yet recorded domestic earnings of only about $272,000. That tiny gross was partly caused by the limited release, but it still made Heart Like a Wheel one of the year's most painful theatrical failures. Number 10. Rockin' Rule, an $8 million animated musical featuring music connected to Debbie Harry, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, Cheap Trick, and Earth, Wind and Fire, should not earn only $30,000. Yet that is what happened to Rockin' Rule. Produced by the Canadian animation company Nelvana, the movie takes place in a future world populated by human-like animals. A famous musician named Mock Swagger searches for a special singing voice that can open a portal to another dimension. He discovers that voice belongs to Angel, a member of a small rock band. Mock kidnaps her and plans to use her performance during a giant concert. Angel's bandmates must reach the show and stop him before his music releases a destructive creature. The film's most memorable sequence is Mock's final concert. He stands on an enormous stage while thousands of fans watch. Angel is forced to sing as machinery, lights, and ancient symbols begin activating around her. The performance turns into a battle between music and supernatural power. Visually, the movie is impressive. The animation uses deep shadows, glowing city streets, strange vehicles, and detailed concert scenes. However, distributors struggled to decide who the audience was. It looked like a cartoon but was darker and more mature than children's entertainment. Adult viewers often assumed animation was not meant for them. MGM/UA gave the film an extremely limited American release. With almost no chance to build word of mouth, it earned approximately $30,379 in the United States against its reported $8 million budget. The failure placed enormous pressure on Nelvana. Today, Rockin' Rule has cult status, but its original theatrical performance remains almost unbelievably small. Number 9. Brainstorm. Brainstorm was supposed to change how audiences experienced movies. Director Douglas Trumbull, the visual effects innovator connected to 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Blade Runner, wanted special widescreen sequences to make viewers feel as though they had entered another person's mind. Christopher Walken plays scientist Michael Brace, who helps create a machine capable of recording human senses and emotions. A person wearing the device can later replay someone else's experience as though it is happening directly to them. At first, the invention captures simple pleasures. One researcher records a ride down a water slide, allowing others to feel the speed and excitement. But the corporation funding the project sees military possibilities, while Michael begins worrying about how the technology could be misused. The most famous sequence involves researcher Lillian Reynolds, played by Louise Fletcher, recording her final moments. Michael later plays the recording, hoping to discover what exists beyond ordinary human awareness. The image expands, the sound becomes overwhelming, and the film moves from science fiction into a strange spiritual journey. Natalie Wood plays Michael's estranged wife, Karen. Her passing during production created an extremely difficult situation. MGM considered stopping the project, and Trumbull fought to complete it, using rewritten scenes, stand-ins, and material already filmed. The troubled history made promotion complicated. Although the movie was sometimes described as Wood's final film, MGM released it on a relatively limited number of screens with restrained advertising. Reports place the budget between $15 and $18 million. Its North American gross reached only about $10.2 million. Because theaters retained part of that money, the production never came close to recovering its full cost during the original release. Number 8. The Right Stuff. How does a movie win 4 Academy Awards and still become a box office failure? The Right Stuff follows American test pilots and the first Mercury astronauts during the early years of the space program. Director Philip Kaufman presents the story as both history and mythology, showing how ordinary men were transformed into national heroes. Sam Shepard plays Chuck Yeager, the fearless pilot who breaks the sound barrier. Ed Harris, Dennis Quaid, Scott Glenn, and Fred Ward appear as members of the Mercury program. The film also gives attention to the astronauts' wives, who face constant fear while television cameras turn their families into entertainment. The most famous sequence shows Yeager climbing into the experimental Bell X-1 with injured ribs. He uses part of a broom handle to close the aircraft door, then flies toward the edge of control. When he breaks the sound barrier, people on the ground hear an enormous boom and initially fear something has gone wrong. Another unforgettable scene occurs when astronaut John Glenn prepares for launch. His wife Annie struggles with a speech condition and refuses to meet Vice President Lyndon Johnson on live television. Glenn supports her even though government officials pressure him to cooperate. The film was admired, but it ran for more than 3 hours and was difficult to schedule in theaters. Its advertising also struggled to explain whether it was a space adventure, historical epic, comedy, or serious drama. The reported production budget was $27 million. Its original worldwide records commonly show only about $21.5 million in box office earnings. 4 Oscar wins, strong reviews, and later home video success repaired its reputation, but not its initial theatrical balance sheet. Number 7. Nate and Hayes. After Raiders of the Lost Ark became a phenomenon, studios searched for their own fast-moving adventure heroes. Nate and Hayes attempted to combine Indiana Jones-style action with pirates, islands, old sailing ships, and a romantic rescue mission. Tommy Lee Jones plays Captain Bully Hayes, a charming but unreliable trader sailing through the South Pacific. Michael O'Keefe plays Nathaniel Williamson, a young missionary traveling with his bride Sophie. Their peaceful journey ends when pirate Ben Pease attacks their island settlement and kidnaps Sophie. Nate blames Hayes for what happened, but the two men must work together to follow Pease across the ocean. The movie's strongest sequence involves Hayes and Nate stealing a steam-powered ship while enemy forces close around them. Cannons fire, sailors rush across the decks, and the heroes use tricks rather than military strength to escape. The location photography gives the action a scale that many later adventure copies lacked. Another memorable moment takes place during a formal dinner held by a corrupt ruler. Hayes pretends to behave like a respectable guest while secretly planning his escape. Jones's performance is playful, showing an early version of the dry confidence he would use in later films. However, audiences had already seen Raiders, and Nate and Hayes looked like a late imitation. Its title offered no clear promise of pirates or adventure, while the marketing failed to make Tommy Lee Jones appear like a new blockbuster hero. The movie reportedly cost around $12 million, but earned only about $1.9 million in the United States and Canada. The hoped-for adventure franchise ended immediately, leaving behind an expensive production that later found more appreciation on television and home video. Number 6. The Pirates of Penzance. The Pirates of Penzance did not fail because nobody liked the stage production. The Broadway version had been a major success. Kevin Kline won awards for playing the Pirate King, Linda Ronstadt attracted music fans, and the cast performed Gilbert and Sullivan's material with tremendous energy. The movie keeps the operetta's comic story. Frederick has spent his youth serving a group of unusually polite pirates. He believes his contract ends on his 21st birthday, allowing him to leave and marry Mabel, the daughter of Major General Stanley. Then Frederick learns that he was born on February 29th. Technically, he has celebrated only a few true birthdays, meaning his service may continue for decades. The film's most famous sequence is Major General Stanley's extremely fast song. George Rose delivers complicated lines, while dancers and pirates rush around him. The scene captures the production's theatrical energy and verbal humor. Kevin Kline also dominates the movie as the Pirate King, especially during the large group number in which the supposedly dangerous pirates move with perfect comic timing. The performances were not the financial problem. Universal made a controversial release decision. The movie became available through pay television at nearly the same time it entered theaters. Major cinema chains refused to book it because customers could watch it at home. The film opened in only 91 small venues and earned roughly $255,000 during its first weekend. Its total worldwide theatrical gross reached only about $694,000. Development reports estimated a budget near $12 million. The pay television sales provided some revenue, but theatrically, The Pirates of Penzance became a historic example of a studio damaging its own release strategy. Number 5. The Wicked Lady. Faye Dunaway, Alan Bates, John Gielgud, Denholm Elliott, expensive costumes, historic locations, and a famous British story should have created a major period adventure. Instead, The Wicked Lady earned less than $1 million in American theaters. Dunaway plays Lady Barbara Skelton, a wealthy woman who becomes bored with her comfortable life. Seeking excitement, she secretly disguises herself as a highway robber. Her nighttime adventures bring her into contact with Captain Jerry Jackson, played by Alan Bates. Barbara's two identities begin colliding. During the day, she behaves like a respected member of society. At night, she stops carriages and takes valuables while hiding behind a mask. Her desire for danger becomes stronger than her concern for the people around her. The best-known scene shows Barbara and another woman involved in a chaotic physical fight. Their clothing is gradually damaged as the struggle moves across the room. The sequence received enormous attention during promotion, but it also made the film appear less like a serious historical drama and more like sensational entertainment. Another memorable moment shows Barbara riding through the darkness in full disguise, stopping a carriage with complete confidence. Dunaway looks powerful in these scenes, yet the screenplay gives the audience little reason to support her character. The reported budget varies widely. Some sources list approximately $8 million, while production accounts say financing reached around $15 million. Either figure was disastrous against a domestic gross of only about $725,000. The movie received harsh reviews and quickly vanished from American theaters. Its expensive cast and design remained visible on screen, but almost none of that investment returned through ticket sales. Number 4. Something Wicked This Way Comes. Disney spent years trying to turn Ray Bradbury's novel into a dark family fantasy. The studio eventually created a visually rich movie, then spent additional money changing it when executives became unhappy with the original version. The story follows two boys, Will Halloway and Jim Nightshade, living in a quiet American town. One night, a mysterious carnival arrives, long after the normal carnival season. Its owner, Mr. Dark, played by Jonathan Pryce, offers people exactly what they desire. However, every wish carries a hidden price. Jim wants to become older, while Will's father, Charles Halloway, struggles with regret over his age and past failures. The movie's most famous scene features a magical carousel that can change a person's age. When it moves forward, riders become older. When it turns backward, they become younger. The glowing ride appears exciting, but its power destroys the natural order of life. Another excellent scene shows Mr. Dark entering the town library and tempting Charles with the promise of youth. Dark slowly tears pages from a book, while explaining how easily he can remove years from Charles's life. Jason Robards and Jonathan Pryce turn the quiet conversation into the film's most intense confrontation. Disney ordered reshoots, replaced effects, changed the ending, and brought in composer James Horner after rejecting an earlier musical score. These changes helped raise the reported cost to around $20 million. Despite some positive reviews, the film earned only about $8.4 million domestically. Its frightening mood confused families expecting traditional Disney entertainment, while older viewers assumed it was mainly for children. That confused audience position turned an ambitious fantasy into a costly failure. Number 3. The King of Comedy. Today, The King of Comedy is often described as one of Martin Scorsese's most intelligent films. In 1983, audiences stayed away from it almost completely. Robert De Niro plays Rupert Pupkin, an unsuccessful comedian who believes he is only one television appearance away from becoming famous. Jerry Lewis plays Jerry Langford, a popular late-night host who becomes the center of Rupert's obsession. Rupert repeatedly visits Jerry's office, calls his employees, and creates imaginary conversations in which he is already a celebrated entertainer. He cannot understand the difference between politeness and friendship. The film's most famous scenes take place inside Rupert's basement. He has built cardboard figures of celebrities and a fake television set. Rupert performs his comedy routine before an imaginary audience while pretending Jerry is his personal friend. The scene is funny at first, but it becomes increasingly uncomfortable as viewers understand how deeply Rupert believes the fantasy. Later, Rupert and another obsessed fan hold Jerry inside an apartment while Rupert demands a place on the television show. The film avoids presenting him as a normal hero. His actions are selfish and disturbing, yet the media attention eventually gives him the fame he wanted. Audiences expected another explosive Scorsese and De Niro crime drama. Instead, they received a quiet, uncomfortable satire about celebrity culture. The humor was deliberately painful, and the advertising struggled to communicate its tone. The reported production budget reached $19 to $20 million. Its worldwide recorded gross was only about $2.5 million. That enormous gap made it one of Scorsese's worst theatrical failures, even though its ideas about manufactured fame now appear more accurate than ever. Number 2. Losing It. Before Tom Cruise became one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, he appeared in Losing It, a youth comedy that studios hoped would attract the same audience as other popular teenage movies. The story takes place in 1965. Cruise plays Woody, who travels from California to Tijuana with his friends Dave, Spider, and Wendell. Each boy has a different reason for crossing the border, but all of them expect the trip to become an exciting adventure. Shelley Long plays Kathy, an unhappy woman who joins the group because she needs help handling a personal legal matter. Her presence gives the movie a more serious storyline, but that story often clashes with the foolish behavior of the young men. A memorable scene shows their bright car moving through the crowded streets of Tijuana, while the boys confidently pretend they understand the city. Within minutes, their plans begin falling apart. They misunderstand local situations, attract unwanted attention, and lose control of what was supposed to be a simple weekend. The film's biggest attraction today is seeing Cruise before Risky Business and Top Gun. He already has confidence and screen presence, but the character gives him little emotional depth. Director Curtis Hanson would later make respected thrillers and dramas, making this early comedy feel even more unusual. The movie reportedly cost around $7 million. Its opening weekend brought in less than $500,000 from approximately 180 theaters, and its total domestic gross stopped near $1.2 million. Cruise would become a major star only months later, but Losing It was unable to benefit from that success during its original run. Number 1. Cruel. Cruel was supposed to give Columbia Pictures its own answer to Star Wars, Excalibur, and the growing fantasy craze. Instead, it became the most famous financial disaster of 1983. The story takes place on a distant planet, where Prince Colwyn plans to marry Princess Lissa. Their wedding will unite two kingdoms against an invading creature called the Beast. Before the ceremony is completed, the Beast's army attacks and carries Lissa into the Black Fortress. Colwyn begins a rescue journey with a group that includes thieves, a magician, a cyclops, and an old guide named Ynir. His special weapon is the glaive, a five-pointed flying blade that became the movie's most recognizable image. The famous sequence involving the Widow of the Web remains genuinely impressive. Ynir enters a giant web to ask a powerful woman where the Black Fortress will appear. A huge spider moves toward him, while the sands inside a magical hourglass measure his remaining time. Another spectacular scene shows Colwyn's group riding fire mares, horses that move so quickly their hooves leave trails of flame. The sequence demonstrates exactly where the production money went. More than 20 enormous sets were reportedly constructed across over 10 Pinewood sound stages. Designs changed during production, forcing expensive rebuilding. Yet audiences saw the story as a mixture of other successful fantasies rather than something new. Reliable estimates place the production budget near $27 to $30 million, although some industry calculations used a total investment as high as $47 million. The movie earned only about $16.9 million. One historical box office estimate placed the net loss around $33.5 million. Within weeks of release, its weak ticket sales made the disaster obvious. Krull later earned a loyal cult following, but in 1983, the Beast did not destroy the kingdom, its budget did. Which disaster deserved a better chance, and which one was doomed before opening night? 1983 proved that famous actors, giant sets, and respected directors could not force audiences into theaters. Some of these movies later became classics, while others remained warnings written in red ink. Share your biggest surprise in the comments, like the video, and subscribe as we uncover more forgotten films that made Hollywood executives panic.